Day poem, and we'll interview her about Earth Day. Continuing, we'll have Lisa Grupp Steinecker. She is a librarian at SHAPE, and she's going to do a presentation about how libraries transform. We'll have a segment on foraging 101 and also calculating your personal impact on the environment. To try to, we'll have some serious topics coming up in the afternoon, like very serious. Not that the first part wasn't serious. So we're going to have a little bit of a break. We'll have Kendra Bogan. She's going to do some comedy, Earth Day comedy, and then we will maybe give away a little bit of swag. That will be followed by Tanis Williamson in conversation with Nataki Osborne-Jeltsin on environmental justice and COVID-19. After that, hopefully that will be an interesting conversation. We will watch the film Rollbacks, and that'll be followed by a Q&A with the producers of Rollbacks. Continuing on in the next hour, we will have Martha Devitt McPugh show us how to make masks. And before we do that, we're gonna watch a short video on how the coronavirus spreads. So you definitely need to wear a mask when you see this, you'll know. Following Martha, we'll have Christiana Figueres, and she will join us. She was one of the people that wrote the Paris Climate Agreement, and she'll join us there for a talk, and then we'll have a Q&A with her. After that, and it will be getting towards the evening. I think we'll be in about hour 9 or so. Dr. Mark Weiss, who is the chairman and CEO of Global Urban Development, will join us to talk about climate action, sustainable innovation zones, and inclusive prosperity. That should be really interesting. Following Mark, we'll have another Vote Earth section with Heidi Birch about GeoTV. Then we'll have the Hispanic Caucus do a segment called Earth 2020, do you want to reboot in safe mode, which should be really interesting. Then we'll have Jim Christensen join us to discuss influencing environmental policy through Democrats abroad, followed by the Youth Caucus presenting a discussion on how to fight climate change. We'll return to Katie Solon to talk about another Vote Earth section, phone banking and how important it is. And then hopefully we'll still be on time and we'll have a few final remarks. And hopefully by the end of the day, everyone will have felt like they've learned something, been able to influence something, and that we've, just had a great day together.
That's a pretty amazing program.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff, but I just want to thank everyone who's contributing to this, whether you're contributing by being a participant or a panelist, or you're watching on Facebook. It's really awesome, and I greatly appreciate everybody's contributions. This has been an amazing process. So happy Earth Day, and thanks for coming. Let's talk about some history of Earth Day, shall we? No, not talking? All right. Well, basically, the history of Earth Day, it's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, but America's environmental awakening came with the book, Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring. She wrote a book about how chemicals, pesticides were making people sick, destroying the plant life and animals all around. And she was deeply concerned for the future of our planets and all living things on Earth. And this was she published this book in 1962. And basically that kicked off a national awakening to environmental causes and environmental justice. So unfortunately, she died basically 2 years after she passed, that she wrote this book. But what she did was something that nobody else ever did. So if you ever have a chance to read this book, Silent Spring, please go ahead and do that. Our next person who is very influential about Earth Day is Senator Gaylord Nelson. He was from Wisconsin, and of course, he was a Democrat. He came up with the idea for a national day to focus on the environment after he witnessed the severe damages from an oil spill in Santa Barbara in 1969. He was inspired by the anti-war movement and realized that if he could immerse the energy of anti-war protest with the increasing awareness about pollution, then the environmental protection could be forced into the public agenda. Um, so in on April 22nd in 1970, 20 million Americans, at the time that was 10% of the population of the United States, took to the streets and parks and auditoriums to demonstrate for a healthy, sustainable environment and in massive coast to coast rallies. Thousands of colleges and universities organized protests against the deterioration of the environment. Earth Day 1970 had the support of both Republicans and Democrats alike, and by the end of 1970, the first Earth Day led to the creation of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, otherwise known as the EPA. In addition to this, it also led to the passage of the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act. I just want to say that the film rollbacks that we're going to be viewing later on it's rather sad. And everyone is aware of all the environmental damage that Donald Trump and his administration has done, all the things that they've actually rolled back, all the laws that they've changed. It's very shocking to me that basically people in businesses obviously don't consider themselves as humans, because we all need clean water and clean air and food that's untainted. And I think that they're just deceiving themselves that somehow they'll be immune, that somehow if 90% of the earth is polluted, like their little 2%, 10% will be fine because they're rich and they'll be able to be okay. But it's not true. Environmental damage and climate change is coming for everyone. Don't be deceived. It's not just going to happen to poor people. As a person with more money, you might be able to hold out a little bit longer, but there are things that could happen in climate change that I think that we can't imagine at this time. A couple of days ago, I was watching a video from about things that the Hubble telescope picks up inside of our own solar system. And the Hubble telescope is not meant to look at our solar system, but just sometimes during the positioning, it can see things in our solar system. And one of the things that it showed in this video was that there was a storm raging across Mars that was more than 1,000 kilometers. And when I saw that, I thought, is that a thing? Can that happen? Could that happen here on Earth? And the thing is that I'm not saying that it will happen, but it could, because we don't know what destroying our air patterns, our water, heating up the water, melting down all the polar ice caps. We don't know what this is going to do. I mean, we can only see a small amount of what is happening, but there's been way more hurricanes, way more violent storms over the past few years. And it's only going to intensify if we don't do something. And we have to do something because, quite honestly, I want to live through this. A lot of people are always saying, oh, it's about your children, but it's happening now. So it's not when I'm dead and then my children are going to have some kind of, terrible fate, and I'm going to leave them alone. It's actually happening now. So protect yourself, protect your children, protect the future that we all share. In 2018, the climate science came back and said, okay, we've overestimated a little bit. We really only have 10 years. So that was 2 years ago. And we've wasted all this time with Donald Trump with all these other right-wing people in governments, or not even right-wing, just maybe dumb. And we have to move ahead and make plans. We have to demand more of our government. We cannot accept the status quo, because the status quo is going to kill us. And this time, during this coronavirus, the status quo doesn't exist anymore. And we can't let them drag us back to it. We have to move forward. The air is clearing in many places. I'm sure everybody's seen those pictures of clean air, dolphins in the water that they weren't normally there, animals coming into city places that they haven't been. Things are changing, and it's for the positive. And I'm not saying that, nobody ever needs to fly again, or we don't need to drive anywhere, but we really have to think about what we're going to do. And hopefully this broadcast will bring us forward in our thinking and give us some ideas, because for a lot of people, it's hard to imagine a future that we've never had. So we want to help you imagine that future and get to the point where you're ready to stand up and fight for our lives, fight for our children's lives, fight for our planet. There is no planet B is not just a catchy saying. Like, there isn't one. And even if there was, you're not going to get there. Only rich people are. Really rich people, like billionaires, because that's what it's going to take. A few weeks ago, Donald Trump signed a executive order wanting to allow mining on the moon. So just to show the folly of the way a lot of these people think. So they've destroyed the earth and looted it of all its, minerals and different things. So now we want to head to the moon. And it made me think, so that's why we have a Space Force, to protect the moon and mining minerals from it. And it's not necessary. We shouldn't just be destroying everything that we touch. It's not right, and it's not fair to all the other beings on this planet, because humans aren't the only people, aren't the only sentient beings on this planet, or even just beings on this planet. All right, so I've probably gone on too much.
Beautiful points, Angela. I think you speak for everybody. Your thoughts are my thoughts too, but you say them in such a beautiful, articulate way. I'm looking forward to seeing the film The Vote Earth, and about forget, the next little clip is forget
forgotten showers.
Forget short showers. I think that's very interesting, because it touches on this very interesting topic of personal lifestyle changes versus political resistance and organized political action. So I think that'll be also interesting. Okay, so what's up?
All right. So let me just take a look at my schedule real quick. And I hope everybody can just forgive that if we're not totally, prompt, or this is the first time that anything like this has ever been done in DA, that we've brought together all 3 regions, and we're trying to have people from all over participate. So there might be a few bumps here and there. I want to start off with the forgotten showers. So let me just pull that up. It's a 12-minute short documentary based on an article that someone wrote. And it's very, very good. So one moment.
And go ahead and put your comments or your questions about this little clip into the
Q&A box.
The chat box, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, if you have questions at any time, just please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll address them when we can, hopefully as quickly as possible. So hold on 1 minute, and we will view forgotten showers. So if everybody who's on the panel could mute their mics, that would be awesome.
Would any sane person think that dumpster diving would have stopped Hitler, or that composting would have ended slavery, or brought about the 8-hour workday, or that chopping wood and carrying water would have gotten people out of Tsarist prisons, or that dancing around a fire would have helped put in place the Voting Rights Act of 1957 or the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Then why now, with all the world at stake, do so many people retreat into these entirely personal solutions? Part of the problem is that we've been victims of a campaign of systematic misdirection. Consumer culture and the capitalist mindset have taught us to substitute acts of personal lifestyle choices for organised political resistance. The same is true for spiritual enlightenment. This is not organised political resistance. An inconvenient truth helped raise consciousness about global warming. But did you notice that all of the solutions presented had to do with personal consumption, changing light bulbs, inflating tyres, driving half as much, and had nothing to do with shifting power away from corporations or stopping the growth economy that is destroying the planet?
Each one of us is a cause of global warming, but each of us can make choices to change that. With the things we buy, the electricity we use, the cars we drive, we can make choices to bring our individual carbon emissions to zero.
But even if every person in the United States did everything the movie suggested, US carbon emissions would fall by only 22%. And scientific consensus is that emissions must be reduced by at least 75% worldwide. Or let's talk water. We so often hear that the world is running out of water. People are dying from lack of water. Rivers are dewatered from lack of water. And while this is true, we're told that because of this, we must take shorter showers. But see the disconnect? Because I take showers, I'm responsible for drawing down aquifers? Well, no. More than 90% of the water used by humans is used by agriculture and industry. The remaining 10% is split between municipalities and actual living, breathing individual humans. Collectively, municipal golf courses use as much water as municipal human beings. That's insane. People, both human people and fish people, aren't dying because the world is running out of water. They're dying because the water is being stolen. Well, let's talk energy. Kirkpatrick Sale summarised it well. For the past 15 years, the story has been the same every year. Individual consumption, residential, by private car and so on, is never more than about a quarter of all consumption. The vast majority is commercial, industrial, corporate, by agribusiness and government. He forgot the military. So even if we all took up cycling and wood stoves, it would have a negligible impact on energy use, global warming and atmospheric pollution. Or let's talk waste. In 2005, per capita municipal waste production, basically everything that's put out at the curb, in the United States was about 1,660 pounds. Let's say you're a die-hard simple living activist, and you reduce this number to 0. You recycle everything. You bring cloth bags shopping. You fix your toaster. Your toes poke out of your old tennis shoes. You're not done yet though. Since municipal waste includes not just residential waste, but also waste from government offices and businesses, you march down to those offices, waste reduction pamphlets in hand, and convince them to cut down on their waste enough to eliminate your share of it. Well, I've got some bad news. The municipal waste accounts for only 3% of total waste production in the United States. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that we shouldn't live simply. I live reasonably simply myself. But I don't pretend that not buying much, or not driving much, or not having kids is a powerful political act, or that it's deeply revolutionary. Because it isn't. Personal change does not equal social change. So how then, and especially with all the world at stake, have we come to accept these utterly insufficient responses? I think part of it is that we're in a double bind. A double bind is when you're given multiple options, but no matter what option you choose, you lose. And withdrawal is not an option. At this point, it should be pretty easy to recognise that every action involving the industrial economy is destructive. And we shouldn't pretend that solar photovoltaics, for example, exempt us from this. They still require mining and transportation infrastructures at every point in the production process. The same can be said for every other so-called green technology. If we choose option 1, if we avidly participate in the industrial economy, we may think in the short term we win, because we may accumulate wealth, the marker of so-called success in this culture, but we lose, because in so doing we give up our empathy, our animal humanity, and we really lose because industrial civilization is killing the planet, which means everyone loses. And if we choose the alternative option of living more simply, thus causing less harm, but still not stopping the industrial economy from killing the planet, we may in the short term think we win because we got to feel pure, and we didn't even have to give up all of our empathy, just enough to justify not stopping the horror. But once again, we really lose because industrial civilization is killing the planet, which means everyone still loses. The third option, acting decisively to stop the industrial economy, is very scary for a number of reasons, including but not restricted to the fact that we'd lose some of the luxuries. For example, electricity, to which we've grown very accustomed, and the fact that those in power might try to kill us if we seriously impede their ability to exploit the world. None of which alters the fact that it's a better option than a dead planet. Any option is a better option than a dead planet. Besides being ineffective at causing the sorts of changes necessary to stop this culture from killing the planet, there are at least 4 other problems with perceiving simple living as a political act, as opposed to living simply because that's what you want to do. The first is that it's predicated on the flawed notion that humans inevitably harm their land base. Simple living as a political act consists solely of harm reduction, ignoring the fact that humans can help the earth as well as harm it. We can rehabilitate streams, we can get rid of noxious invasives, we can remove dams, we can disrupt a political system tilted towards the rich, as well as an extractive economic system. We can destroy the industrial economy that is destroying the real physical world. The second problem, and this is another big one, is that it incorrectly assigns blame to the individual, and most especially to individuals who are particularly powerless, instead of to those who actually wield power in this system, and to the system itself. The third problem is that it accepts capitalism's redefinition of us from citizens to consumers. By accepting this redefinition, we reduce our potential forms of resistance to consuming and not consuming. But citizens have a much wider range of available resistance tactics, including voting or not voting, running for office, pamphleting, boycotting, organising, lobbying, protesting. And when a government becomes destructive of life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness, we have the right to alter or abolish it. The fourth problem is that the end point of the logic behind simple living as a political act is suicide. If every act within an industrial economy is destructive, and if we want to stop this destruction, and if we are unwilling or unable to question, much less destroy, the intellectual, moral, economic and physical infrastructures that cause every act within an industrial economy to be destructive, then we can easily come to believe that we will cause the least destruction possible if we're dead. The good news is that there are other options. We can follow the examples of brave activists who lived through the difficult times I mentioned. Nazi Germany, Tsarist Russia, antebellum United States, who did far more than manifest a form of personal purity. They actively opposed the injustices that surrounded them. We can follow the example of those who remembered that the role of an activist is not to navigate systems of oppressive power with as much personal integrity as possible, but rather to confront and take down those systems. Let's get to work.